Good afternoon. Welcome to a special episode of Sports Storm, Pembroke Lumber Kings edition. We are joined today by Pembroke Lumber King alumnus and current assistant coach Sean Crozier, Director of Media Relations for the PLK, Jeff Patterson, and Pembroke Lumber Kings intern, Ian Burnham. Good afternoon, gentlemen. August, and we're already thinking hockey. Pembroke coming off, maybe, I don't want to call it a substandard season, but the bar had been set in the Sean Crozier years of winning the trophy every year. What's the season look like coming up into camp?
I think we'll be pretty competitive. Obviously, like you stated, the goal is not just to make the playoffs and win a round. The goal is to win championships, and I think management's done a pretty good job here the off season trying to plug some holes, and we moved a couple of guys on last year, but which we're happy to see them move on, and we made some changes, and we're hoping that the changes we made can work out to us winning our division. I think that's the goal to start, is win our division that we're in, and then obviously the end goal is to get better every day and win a championship.
Sean, last year was your first year behind the bench?
Yes.
What was some of the real differences from playing to coaching? What are some of the adjustments you had to make in your mentality?
Well, I think the biggest thing is when you're playing, you're into the game, you're into every shift, and you seem to know or have an opinion on what happened on the ice from your perspective. And then as a coach, though, you're watching, you're not in it. And you're trying to get a perspective of all five guys' opinions, I guess, of what happened on the ice. So it was a big adjustment at the start. There's a lot of stuff going on that you never think of when you're a player, and the stuff you're trying to watch for as a coach. And so there's some growing pains for sure on, sometimes players would come off the ice and they'd be asking questions, and you have to really try to remember back, and then as the season goes on, you get a little bit better at picking out details, and it's just like anything else. It's hard at the start, but practice makes perfect, and it's still got a long way to go, obviously, but I think it was a good year.
Jeff, you witnessed firsthand not only the Lumber King season, but a really memorable ride for Carleton Place all the way to the Royal Bank Cup final. What's your take? Carleton Place going to be competitive this year? Can the Kings play with them?
I think they're going to be a strong team again, Adam, for sure. They're, they have a fair bit of returnees. Of course, getting to the Royal Bank Cup, they can walk with that extra little swagger. So that's going to be obviously, the measuring stick for the league. When you're building a team, you want to be knocking off the defending champs, the big dogs, and those are the guys to beat right now. So I think that's how the Kings are looking at some of the restructuring this off-season, trying to acquire the personnel that's going to be able to knock off Carleton Place.
When you think Lumber Kings, arguably the most storied Tier 1 franchise in junior hockey in Canada, talk about what it meant to put on the jersey or to call a game, to put on the red and white of Hockeytown, Canada.
Obviously, being a local guy, it was relatively local. I mean, I think in Pembroke we consider anybody from the valley to be local, not just somebody from the city of Pembroke or surrounding municipalities. But just to grow up and have that it was the most storied franchise in Hockeytown, Canada, and then have the opportunity to be lucky enough to be able to put that sweater on was a huge honor. And then for me especially, the championships that I was a part of were huge for me because with the first one we ended an 18-year drought, and so the talk going into my first year that we ended up losing was can we end the drought? We had the so-called dream team, and then we ultimately failed that season, but then we move on to the next year, and to finally give the fans, we had great support that year, and it just seemed like around that time hockey was a huge buzz in Pembroke, and give those fans something to cheer about was something extremely special.
At this time, it's going to contest time here on the podcast. First person to email me at podcast@noack.ca, that's noack.ca, will win a free Lumber Kings t-shirt, if you can identify the jersey number that Sean Crozier wore in his time in Pembroke. Very easy. Very easy. Email me, first one. Going to win some Pembroke Lumber King merchandise. You also hear our mascot in the back, Tank Nowak here, giving us some insight. Sean, you went on and played at Newman College in Philadelphia. What was that transition like?
I think the biggest transition was, you went from Pembroke, where the speed was there, and you're playing in a small town and that, but then you went on, and the biggest thing I learned is, I was lucky enough to play in an organization where when I went to school and met some other players from across Canada, they were like, oh, you played in Pembroke, and they knew right away. But at the same time, it was a whole new can of worms. I mean, people at that point, it was really hard to earn your spot. It was just, nothing was given to you. And the college game, the biggest adjustment is you're playing on a roster with at least 25 guys, 27 guys. So every day at practice was competitive, because guys that weren't in the lineup wanted to be in the lineup, and they want to take a person's spot that was playing the games. So going from Pembroke, where you play 62 games or 60 game schedules, and some days are not so much going through the motions, but they're lighter days. You're not getting physical going. Whereas you go to school, you're playing a lot shorter season, and the practices are way more competitive. And the thing is, like, you can't make trades, so the roster is what you got, and people want to get in the lineup.
Academically, what was it challenging? How was that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a pretty decent student in high school, so I was a little nervous, though, taking some time off from school and then going to a university. But I mean, it's just like anything else. Once you kind of get a routine going, and you get the biggest challenge is making sure that you got yourself into a good routine where you can go to class, get your work done, and go to practice and stuff. But once you got into a routine, it's it just became second nature. Some days, though, hard days at the rink and in the gym, and then trying to open up some books, wasn't obviously top of mind. But at the end of the day, you had to do what you had to do.
Jeff, let's talk about people to look for on the roster this year. And it's early yet. You never know who you're going to get, who's going to be picked up by an OHL club, who's not going to return. Is there any names that pop up for you?
Well, I mean, I guess you'd say, aside from the new acquisitions, they're kind of unproven commodities right now. Pembroke going to be looking toward Felix Chamberlain to have a big year. This guy, Adam, he's really pulls a lot of moves out of his bag of tricks. He's extremely talented and has unlimited potential. Seemed to put on a little bit of weight in the when we saw him in the July camp.
Now, is that good weight or?
Well, not like you and I.
Okay.
Kind of a little bit of strength, I would think. And he's looking to have a real breakout year, and I'm pretty confident he's going to be the guy leading the club, perhaps, and just a solid performer. From
a very selfish perspective and a non-hockey guy, I really hope Jacob Collins can really stick around. I know he got drafted 99th overall in the O by Plymouth, but he's a heck of a kid and a heck of an athlete. I had the opportunity to coach him in soccer. I'd love for him to stick around, but I guess time will tell.
Mm-hmm.
I guess before we close, we might as well get into a little bit of banter, because I know Ian here is a Penguins fan and Jeff is a Flyers fan. What colors are you?
I'm a Sens fan.
Okay, well, I like the Sens as well. Let's get into some banter here. Ian, what do you expect from the Penguins this year?
I really like what they did to upgrade their bottom six. I think Jim Rutherford has delivered on most of his promises that he made coming in. I think they've put together a more balanced playoff squad, whereas last season I noticed that Sidney Crosby was getting his head beat most of the time. I feel if players make that move towards Crosby again, they're going to have to answer to Steve Downey, which no one really wants to do in that league.
Speaking of head beating or butt touching, you ultimately have to go to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers. Not the most gracious stories coming out of Philly this summer. What do you expect?
Well, you're looking at a recent acquisition yesterday of Del Zotto, which is really going to lend to their blue line credibility. There's some health.
Credibility, not a word you always associate with Philadelphia Flyer stardom.
Now you're starting to really get a little nitpicky, Adam. I think you let Mr. Burnham off the hook a little bit when he didn't even address his glaring goaltending needs in our Pennsylvanian cross-state rival. I think Philly's in great shape. Pittsburgh better be very worried. So maybe I'll just sum it up that way.
All right.
We're all right. Don't worry about the orange and black, my friend.
All right, and the Sens, maybe kind of under the radar, maybe having to lean on some youth. Sean, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not really too worried about them. I think they underachieved last year, and they had 2 years where nobody thought they were going to make the playoffs, and they made it, and then they underachieved, like I said. But I mean, they'll be all right. They'll be competitive. I think Paul McLean will have them playing. My biggest worry, though, is more management side, with the health effects of Brian Murray, and it's just kind of up in the air on the direction that they're going to go. And I know Brian Murray's a pretty reputable guy, and that's why, as a Sens fan, you're always kind of happy to have a GM like that. So hopefully he gets better and he can start to bringing in guys to really get this team going.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank our guests on a special episode of the podcast. Lumber Kings open their exhibition schedule August 17th with the Nepean Raiders coming into town, and then the showcase schedule starts August 31st. Of course, you can always visit the Pembroke Lumber Kings on the interweb for all your information needs. Thanks to Sean Crozier, Jeff Patterson, and Ian Burnham. Take care.